You can inherit a house, but not the right to exist in it. Sophie sat on the dock sun on her Facebook in hand. It looked like peace. It felt like home. "Then get your ass off my property or I'm calling the damn cops." That voice came slicing through everything. I looked up. Linda, HOA Queen. Big shades, fake smile, rage barely tucked under her breath. Sophie froze. "This is my grandma's cabin," she said. I stepped in. "What the hell's going on?" Linda crossed her arms. "She ain't on no list. And people like her. They don't belong here." She raised her phone. Click. Took a picture. Like Sophie was trespassing on her own life. And just like that, our quiet summer turned into war. She was 8 when she first called this place home. I remember her tiny feet running down the dock, chasing dragonflies. Grandma waited at the end, holding out a popsicle, laughing like summer couldn't end. Back then, Sophie didn't say much. She'd just hold things in. Too many foster homes, too many goodbyes. The cabin was different. Here, she wasn't just visiting, she was safe. Grandma taught her to skip Stone's Bake Pie read stories out loud. And slowly, Sophie stopped flinching every time someone said her name. That dock. That's where she learned how to be a kid again. So when Linda screamed at her like she was a stray, I saw something break in Sophie's eyes, and all I could think was, how do you fight for someone's right to feel safe again when they've only just found it? Sophie stayed inside the rest of the day. Didn't touch her book. Barely spoke. I caught her peeking through the blinds more than once. Linda was still there standing at her window, arms crossed, watching, not moving, not blinking, just staring like we'd stolen something. I tried calling the HOA office. The guy who answered said Linda handled guest compliance. When I asked for someone else, he hung up. The air started feeling heavier. Even the lake felt different, quiet in the wrong way. I walked past the kitchen window and caught Linda still watching, this time with a phone in her hand. Filming, maybe. Sophie asked me if we were in trouble. I told her no, but I wasn't sure anymore. Some people knock before they come for you. Linda. She just watches and waits. I found it taped to the front door. A printed notice. No signature, no seal. You have 48 hours to vacate or face legal consequences. I held it up. Sophie read every word. Slowly. Her hands started to shake. Did she send this, she asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She sat down on the porch step, eyes locked on the trees. Why do they hate me? Uncle Tom, just because I wasn't born here, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. They didn't see her as family. Not really. Not ever. And for people like Linda, that was all they needed. An excuse. Sometimes hate doesn't show up in yelling. Sometimes it comes printed on paper and stuck to your door. She didn't cry. She just sat there still small quiet. I sat beside her and pulled her into a hug. Her head rested against my shoulder, warm and heavy. I could feel her holding it all in. "She's just a power-trippin' Karen," I said steady. "We're not going anywhere. You hear me?" Sophie didn't answer, but her fingers curled into my sleeve. That was enough. I looked out at the lake. Sun dipping lower, the water glass smooth. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. This cabin had seen storms before real ones. Wind, rain, thunder. But this was different. I had a bad feeling. Linda wasn't just angry. She wanted Sophie gone. And people like her, they don't stop with warnings. The cruiser rolled up slow. Lights off. Linda stood on her porch like she'd summoned it. Officer stepped out, hand on his belt. Calm, but ready. "Sir, got a report of trespassing and possible fraud," he said. "This about your niece?" Before I could speak, Linda cut in. "She's been sneaking around like she owns the damn place, but she ain't got no right to be here." Sophie stood up, voice steady, barely. "There's a loose board on the dock," she said. "Third one from the end. Always squeaks when you step on it." She looked at the cop. "And there's a secret stash behind the bookshelf. My grandma used to hide chocolate there. She let me have one if I finished my reading. He paused, looked at her. Something changed in his face. Just a little. Linda, she just scoffed, but I saw her eyes. They flickered. Officer Wilson shifted his weight, looked back at Linda. "Ma'am," he said, slow, "snapping pics of a kid ain't exactly proof." Linda's face twisted. She wasn't expecting pushback. Her voice sharpened. "She's messing with our property values." She pointed at the cabin like it was toxic. "People see some random kid lounging around and think we let just anyone in." Sophie stepped behind me. Didn't say a word. Wilson raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like a crime." Linda huffed. "You don't get it. I'm protecting this neighborhood. She doesn't belong here. None of this is normal. I could feel it shifting. The cop wasn't buying her anymore. And Linda, she was starting to lose control. That scared me more than anything. Next morning, it was taped to our door again. Big red letters. HOA seal stamped like a threat. $500 daily fine for non-compliance. No hearing. No warning. Just numbers and cold ink. Sophie read it once. Then again. Her voice cracked. "That's my whole college fund. Gone." She folded the paper with shaky hands and sat on the porch step. I stood there holding it, feeling the heat rise in my neck. We hadn't broken a damn rule, not one. But Linda wasn't trying to follow rules. She was trying to bleed us out. Not with police, not with threats, with money, paper, fear. Sophie wiped her face with her sleeve. Didn't say anything else, and for the first time since we got here, I started to wonder if we really could win. We were knee-deep in old boxes dust everywhere. Tom pulled out a folder wrapped in faded floral cloth. Inside, something real. HOA exemption. Signed July 1997. There was a yellowed note stuck to it written in Grandma's messy hand. "Tom, if Linda pulls her shady tricks again, slap her with this." I looked at him wide-eyed. He held it up like a lifeline, but hesitated. "You think this old paper still works?" he asked. I didn't know. I just nodded. If it's real. Maybe it's finally over. Hope crept in slow and shaky. For the first time in days, we had something more than words. We didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the win. It was just the bait. I walked straight to her porch, document in hand. Linda opened the door before I knocked like she'd been waiting. I held it out. "This cabin's exempt," I said. "Since '97. Signed, sealed. My mother kept records. She took it, skimmed it fast. Then she laughed. Not confused, not surprised, just smug. "Cute," she said. "That old crap got tossed in 2022 when we rewrote the bylaws. Your little paper's worthless now. You're screwed, Bennett." She handed it back like it was a piece of trash. "You've got 48 hours. After that, I'm bringing enforcement." I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She knew exactly what she was doing. It wasn't about rules, it was about power, and she wanted us to watch her use it. Sophie stood at the window behind me, silent, watching. I couldn't face her yet. That night, she didn't knock, didn't speak. She just walked across her lawn, slow, deliberate, and stopped at our front window. In her hand was a thick, white envelope. Large red stamp across the front. Final eviction. She held it up to the glass, pressed it there like a threat, and then she smiled. Wide, calm, like she'd already won. Sophie stepped up behind me. She didn't say anything at first, just watched. That smile, that envelope, that silence. Then her voice came low, flat. "She's unhinged, Tom. Like, scary unhinged." I didn't disagree. Because deep down I felt it too. This wasn't just some HOA drama anymore. It was personal, and she wasn't going to stop. I knocked on Margaret Lee's door just after dusk. Lights on, curtains drawn. Her porch still smelled like tea and old pine. She opened slow, like she already knew why I was there. I didn't waste time. "Linda's trying to force Sophie out. We've got less than 2 days." Margaret looked past me for a second toward our cabin. Then she let out a breath and stepped aside. We sat at her kitchen table. Quiet, warm, no judgment. Finally she spoke. "Linda screwed me over too, back when I ran the HOA. She traced the rim of her mug. But Sophie, she said, pausing, voice softer now. She reminds me of someone I used to be. Before I let fear shut me up. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. We had a chance. Maybe. And now we had her. We sat in Margaret's kitchen, old papers spread across the table. Nothing useful yet. Then Sophie looked up, eyes distant. Grandma kept saying the house was mine, she said. Not just in a sweet way, like legal, like she meant it for real. She paused, chewing the inside of her cheek. She told me once, "This place is yours, baby girl. Nobody can take it." My heart jumped. I hadn't thought of that, not as a will, just something a grandmother says. But Sophie remembered more than we did. I pulled out my phone, dialed the county clerk. "Yeah, hi. I need to check a will. Helen Bennett. Filed any time in the last 2 years." The hold tone kicked in. My hand gripped the phone tighter. Maybe this wasn't just memory. Maybe it was the missing piece. After 15 long minutes on hold, someone picked up. "Yes, we have a revised will," the clerk said. "Filed 18 months ago. Helen Bennett. Property at 472 Lakeshore Drive. Left to Sophie Nguyen." I sat back, couldn't breathe for a second. Sophie stared at me. "She did it," I whispered. "Grandma really left it to you." Her face cracked relief, disbelief, everything at once. Margaret grabbed a pen, took notes fast. "We'll need a certified copy. You hear?" she said into the phone. "Fax, email, anything. Tonight." The clerk promised to send it over. We weren't just family anymore. We had proof. Legal binding, solid as stone. Linda never checked. She played bully without facts. And now we had the truth. The email came through just before midnight. Official county seal. Signed by the registrar. Helen Bennett's will updated, notarized clean. It named Sophie as the sole heir of the cabin. No loopholes, no confusion. I printed 3 copies. Margaret reviewed every line like a lawyer. "It's airtight," she said. "No HOA clause can override this. She owns it. Period." Sophie sat at the table silent, reading her name in bold letters. She touched the paper like it might disappear. "So, this means I'm not a guest." "You're the owner, kid," I said. "Always were. Just took the law a minute to catch up." She didn't cry this time. She smiled. Small, solid. For the first time since Linda showed up, Sophie looked like she belonged. By morning, we had everything printed, copied, and sealed in a folder. Margaret made a call to the district legal office just to verify. They confirmed HOA couldn't override a deeded will. Not in this county, not ever. Sophie helped stack the papers, careful with each page like it was gold. She looked different, straighter back, clearer eyes. "You sure we should bring this to the HOA meeting?" I asked. She nodded. They all stood there and watched her tear me down. "I want them to see the truth, too." Margaret leaned back, arms crossed. "Linda won't take this quietly. She's got pride, not facts." I looked at Sophie. "You ready for that?" She took a breath. "Yeah," she said. "She came for me in public, so we answer in public. We were done hiding. The HOA meeting was packed. Folding chairs filled the room, neighbors shoulder to shoulder. Some glanced our way when we walked in. Most looked away. Linda stood at the front stack of papers and hand lips already curling into that smug grin. She tapped the mic like she owned it. "We're here to address a violation she started regarding Mr. Bennett and a minor illegally occupying community property." Murmurs spread across the room. I saw Sophie flinch, but just once. Margaret sat beside us, arms folded tight. Linda flipped through her papers, waving a few like they meant something. "This isn't personal," she said, eyes locked on us. "It's about rules. Order, respect for the neighborhood." I leaned toward Sophie. "Stay calm," I whispered. "Let her dig her own hole." And that she was already doing. Linda kept going. Pages rustled. Her voice got louder, sharper. "They've ignored warnings, violated occupancy rules, damaged HOA credibility." She waved a folder like it held some grand evidence. Then Margaret stood up. Calm, steady, no mic. "I have county records here," she said. "Dated, certified legal. The property at 472 Lakeshore Drive belongs to Sophie Nguyen." The room went silent. I pulled out our copy and held it up. "Will filed 18 months ago. Grandma didn't forget anyone." Linda just never looked. Linda's face froze. She blinked like she hadn't heard right, then barked out, "That's fake. They're faking it." Margaret shook her head. "Check the records yourself. I already did. Twice." Chairs creaked. Neighbors started whispering. And for the first time in weeks, I saw Linda lose the room. Linda scrambled, pulled out printed emails, handwritten notes, HOA memos with her name stamped all over them. You all saw her wandering. That's not ownership, it's manipulation, but no one responded. Peterson, an older guy from 2 cabins down, stood up. "Linda, these are scribbles. You promised us facts. You got nothing but noise." A few others nodded. Some whispered. One woman shook her head slowly. Linda looked around, desperate for backup. There wasn't any. Sophie stood. No shaking, no tears. "I didn't ask for this fight," she said, "but I'm not going to run from a house that's mine, not from someone who never even asked who I was." Margaret raised her copy of the will. "Let's vote," she said. Linda opened her mouth to protest, but nobody was listening anymore. Hands went up. Fast. Margaret counted out loud. 1, 2, 3. By the time she hit 23, it was done. Only one hand stayed down Linda's. Her face was stone, tight, but her eyes, they looked tired. Effective immediately, Margaret announced Linda Carter is removed as HOA president. No clapping, just silence. I glanced at Sophie. She didn't smile. She just nodded once like she knew this wasn't about revenge. Linda didn't say a word. She grabbed her stack of useless papers and walked out the side door. No storm, no yelling, just the sound of a woman who lost everything she built because she built it on fear. Sophie sat back down beside me. No weight on her shoulders for once. She'd earned that seat, and now the whole room knew it. They offered us the mic. Sophie hesitated for half a second, then stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "This isn't about dragging Linda," she said. "It's about what it means to belong." The room went still. I was treated like a stranger in my own home, like I had to prove I deserved to be here every single day. She looked at the back wall. Not at anyone, but past them all. I'm not the only one who's felt that, and I know I won't be the last. She held up the will folded in half. "I didn't come here to fight, but I did fight, because silence only helps the ones who abuse power." She stepped back. No drama, just truth. And that truth had stayed hanging in the room like weight. No one clapped. No one had to. It wasn't that kind of moment. People nodded. Some looked down. A few wiped their eyes. You could feel it, something cracked open in that room. The kind of silence that doesn't just mean quiet, it means change. Sophie sat back down and I put my hand on her shoulder. She didn't flinch, didn't shake. She belonged here now, not just by law, but by presence. Margaret leaned over and whispered, "That kid just changed how they see this whole place." Outside, the lake was still, calm like we hadn't seen in days. Inside, I noticed the neighbors weren't avoiding our eyes anymore. They were meeting them, some with guilt, some with respect, but all of them knew they'd just watched something bigger than a vote. We didn't say much on the walk back to the cabin. Just the crunch of gravel underfoot, the trees swaying easy like the whole place had finally exhaled. Sophie carried the folder under one arm. Didn't clutch it, just held it, like it didn't need to protect her anymore. At the porch, she stopped. Looked out at the lake, same dock where this whole mess started. "You think she knew this would happen?" she asked. "Grandma," I shrugged. "I think she knew you'd fight for it. And win. That was the whole point." Sophie nodded once. Didn't cry, didn't speak. She just sat on the steps, legs pulled close, eyes locked on the water. The storm was over, but what it left behind felt permanent. The next morning was the first in weeks without tension in the air. No knocks, no letters taped to the door, No eyes peeking from across the street. Just birds. Coffee. The kind of quiet you earn. Sophie made breakfast burnt toast, but she didn't care. She hummed while she cooked barefoot on the kitchen floor. I watched her from the table. Not as someone who needed protection anymore, but as someone stepping into her own. "You sleep okay?" I asked. She nodded, like the lake was holding me. I smiled, but didn't say anything, because this peace this morning, it wasn't just quiet, it was ours. And for the first time since she got here, Sophie didn't seem like someone trying to belong. Linda stormed back into the meeting late and flushed, waving a new bundle of papers. "These are emails," she shouted. "Proof of conversations of concern about that girl's presence. And these are my personal notes. HOA records." She tossed them onto the table like they were sacred texts. Peterson stood slowly. He didn't yell. "This ain't proof," he said flat. "It's just your scribbles. None of this says she doesn't belong." A few gasps, a few murmurs. Linda's face dropped. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Someone else muttered, "It's all just hearsay." The crowd wasn't with her anymore. They weren't even curious. She tried to hold her ground, arms crossed, lips tight, but her voice didn't carry like before. The room had shifted, and this time it wasn't shifting back. Margaret stood clipboard in hand. "Let's vote. All in favor of removing Linda Carter as HOA president." Hands shot up. Fast. 23. Only one stayed down hers. She didn't even look up. Margaret nodded. "It's done." The room stayed quiet. No celebration, just air, heavy and real. Then Sophie stepped forward. Her voice was clear, strong, not angry, just done. "This ain't about dragging her," she said. "It's about my right to call this place home." She paused, scanned the room, let it sit. I didn't ask to be welcomed. I asked to be left in peace. And if that's too much for some folks, maybe they need to look at why. People nodded. Some even clapped soft, not loud. It wasn't victory noise, it was release. Linda didn't fight it. No yelling, no last words. She just left. Shoulders heavy, eyes distant. Like the war was finally over, and she lost something deeper than pride. The silence in the street after she walked out, it stayed. Then Mr. Jenkins, the quiet guy from 3 doors down, shuffled up our porch. In his hands an old clay pot with daisies, soil still fresh. His hand trembled as he passed it to Sophie. "I should have said something earlier," he muttered, voice thick, but she made it easy to stay quiet. He looked her straight in the eye. Guilt hanging off every word. "You standing up made us remember what right feels like." Sophie nodded, lips tight. Didn't cry, just held the pot close like it meant more than it looked. And maybe it did. The envelope showed up in our mailbox, no return address. Inside, a crisp check for $25,000. And a folded note, handwritten. Shaky, but honest. Sophie read it aloud, her voice low. "Sophie, I was beefing with the world, not you. And you didn't deserve what I threw your way. I was mad at getting old, at losing control of things that used to make sense. You were just in the blast zone." There was a pause in her reading. "This won't fix what I broke, but maybe it helps with school, or something. Linda Carter." Sophie set the note down. Didn't say much, just stared at the check like it was heavier than paper should be. "You think she meant it?" she asked. I nodded, slow. "I think it's the closest to real she's ever been." We sat on the edge of the dock legs, dangling the water calm beneath us. Sunset made the lake look like fire and glass mixed together. Sophie hugged her knees quiet. Then she asked it. "Did Grandma know this would happen?" I looked out at the horizon the way she used to when she was thinking too far and too deep. She didn't know the details, I said, but she knew you'd fight for this place. And damn, she was right. Sophie smiled, not wide but real. That soft kind of smile that comes from surviving something bigger than yourself. She leaned her head on my shoulder. No music, no big words, just breath lake air and peace. We didn't need to say anything else. The lake held the rest. The screen fades slowly. Dock, water, sky, all blurring into black. No voices, no music, just stillness. Then white words ease onto the dark screen. Have you ever had to prove you belong? Drop, "I feel that," in the comments. It sits there, not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet invitation for anyone who's ever felt small in a place they loved. For anyone who's ever been told they didn't fit, didn't count, didn't belong. A pause, then the screen fades again. End. But the feeling that lingers.